Hey, what's up everyone? So, welcome you guys to Concept to Console. My name is Sergio Elizondo, and this is...
I'm Sarimaru.
And this is our journey in publishing video games from literally start to finish, from, you have an idea to it's now in people's hands, and so...
Yeah, so we'll be going through all the different steps as far as what it's like to put out your own indie game. Before we go through those steps, though, we would like to show you a quick trailer of something that we are both working on together. It is a game called Nyanja, about two little ninja cats, and we have prints here for you guys as well. So at the end of the panel, if you guys want to come over here and grab an art print of our new game, you can. But without further ado, let's go ahead and show you guys this trailer really quick. Alright, so that was the trailer for our newest project. It's called Nyanja. I am the creator of the game, and Sergio is our composer doing all the music for the game. And at the end of the panel, we're going to go ahead and give you guys some prints if you want them. And they're here. But so that's the project that me and him are working on together. We're pretty excited about it. It's exciting. It's pretty much just starting out in development. We've been at it for like a month-ish. Yeah, about a month into it. So. But progress has been good, and we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about our other games towards the end of the panel. But before that, we're going to go ahead and get into all the different talking points.
Yeah. So I think with regards to, for example, game concept and ideation. So one of the games that we're going to see later is a game called Ninja that I had worked on. So before Ninja became Ninja, one thing to keep in mind is that as you're developing or coming up with a concept, it might actually change along the way, and that's actually what happened with Ninja. It originally started as I don't know if you guys are familiar with like a stadium events, kind of like, old school NES kind of game. You're just kind of doing like random events.
We were just talking, it looked a lot like Ice Climbers a little bit.
Kind of, right, yeah. So initially the art style was a little different too. Like they weren't ninjas. It was just kind of a bunch of mini events. But then I started thinking like, well, what's a little more like, I don't know, interesting that people could be like, dude, this is so cool. Like, or you feel a little more connected in some kind of way. And so I've always liked ninjas, and so I was like, okay, well, why don't we just make it a game about ninjas that are training to become ninjas? That is going to be the core concept. So all these like mini events that you go through, it's just you getting one step closer to becoming a ninja. So, and then that's how that kind of evolved and changed from just random events to now it has a theme, now it's got a concept, now it's got, it's going to take you somewhere. And so that was at least the process for Ninja.
Yeah.
I mean, you get...
So
yeah, go ahead.
we both have an affinity for ninjas, hence why this next game is more ninjas. But with my game, originally I made a game called FX Unit Yuki, which is the girl that's hugging our new little ninja cat character. And when I came up with a concept for that game, it was basically, with that one it kind of wrote itself because I already had a webcomic made for it, and then it went from webcomic to video game. So the concept was pretty much already laid out for our game, but going forward with this game, it was basically just that we both liked ninjas and we wanted to make a game that was about ninjas.
Yeah, we like cats too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right.
Design and aesthetic, you want to take that one?
All right, so as far as designing your game, you pretty much have to work with what you're comfortable with, right? So like say you're putting together a game and if you are not the artist but you have an idea, it's about relaying that idea to whoever is doing your game design, right? As far as aesthetics goes, it's what you're comfortable with as far as what you want your game to revolve around, So,
Yeah.
like, what do you think?
I think for me, the design and aesthetic, as I was just mentioning earlier with how Ninja, initially, again, it didn't really have a theme. There was just kind of random events. But once that Ninja theme was applied to it, more ideas started rolling one after the other. Oh, let's make him look like this. Oh, let's make him 2 different colors. Oh, cool. Now the 2-player effect can now do this. And now, oh, let's add a point system. So that way, which ninja is doing better. And so I just feel like once the design was solidly in place, at least for that particular project, it really helped to propel into, just to what it became. But I do think design and aesthetics, again, do play an integral role in making your game feel like what you want it to feel. Yes?
Could whether or not you have like 3D or 2D, the change in design and aesthetics?
Oh yeah, certainly.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
hands down.
No, I don't know. Neither one of us has any real experience with 3D.
No, mine's been
we're,
2D.
We're both very 2D based, sprite,
Pixel,
yeah,
yeah.
pixel, sprite based. But yeah, it could definitely affect it. It really depends too if you have someone who's already working on 3D models for you or anything like that. It might even be faster to go through with creating a game in 3D. It really just all depends. Like sprite based work takes time, but it also depends on how much time you're willing to put into it. But yes, definitely takes it. It does affect it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
for sure.
imagine Collision would be totally different too.
Oh yeah,
It'd be
yeah.
crazy.
It's,
Yeah.
But that's something we have very little experience with, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But when it comes to 2D games,
Yeah.
we
It's a little
definitely
more.
there. Yeah.
And I think that's a great point. I think with regards to scope of the work, with the type of game you're going to be making, I think you got to take into consideration the limitations of what you're working with. Mine in particular, again, is Ninja, is 2D based. Collision and things of that sort were a lot easier to manage. There's only so many points that your character can interact with something or be hit by something or in that particular regard. And so I think when you're starting to make your own first game, really take that into account because that's going to really, really change the scope of work that you're going to be dealing with later significantly.
That actually brings me back to the platform because we actually released our games for old platforms. His game originally released for the NES, and mine released for the TurboGrafx 16. So these are legacy consoles. So that's also going to play a big picture, right?
Yeah.
As far as limitations go, you're limited, especially with the NES. You're limited to a lot
Yeah.
more. When it comes in terms of design, you can't go crazy because you have 3 colors to work with
Yeah.
per sprite. On the TurboGrafx 16, you have 15 colors to work with per sprite and one background color. So that really limits what you can do. So if you're choosing to make a game for the first time, I might not recommend doing it for a legacy platform only because you're going to run into so many limitations. There are other things out there like GameMaker, Unity if you have the time.
GB Studio is a good one.
GB Studio. Oh,
That's that's a legacy.
Yeah.
It's for a legacy console, right? It's for the Game Boy, old school Game Boy. But the GB Studio in itself is such a powerful tool for creating levels and creating different types of mechanics. It handles collision. It handles a lot of things that would normally require a lot of know-how up front as a programmer. Don't even worry about it. You can focus more on the game and how it needs to feel.
right.
And so you could still write for legacy consoles, but here's the other thing too, which we'd be going to later. But Ninja, for example, is going to be on Nintendo Switch, right? So it's also being converted so that it can be played on modern consoles. So if you decide to release a game on a legacy console, there's so many different ways that you can still get it published on the PlayStation Network,
Right. And we'll get to that actually.
Yeah.
That's actually one of our talking points is finding a third-party publisher as well.
Yeah.
Or you can go the route of trying to publish it yourself as well. But we'll get to actually.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
We have that talking point. But I did want to mention how we had originally made our games for legacy consoles. But it might not be the easiest thing. Yes.
Have you two had experience in gaming companies before you started making the games?
I did not.
I had none. I always wanted to make a game, and when I went to planning our game FX Unit Yuki, I pretty much knew the type of game that I wanted to make, but prior to this, I've never made a game before. FX Unit Yuki, which is this game here, was my first game. This is the PC Engine version, and then we ported it to the Sega Dreamcast with help.
So yeah, you don't need to have had prior experience per se. I mean, you learn a lot of things along the way. But
Yeah, it does require a lot of research, though.
It does,
A lot
yes.
of trial and error,
Yes.
too. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I have a question as well. It's a very nerdy question and technical, but I can imagine that using external hardware such as cartridges, discs and stuff versus a digital download game can also really affect development. and this is a very nerdy question, but there are certain PS3 games that come to mind that do not work properly if you don't use the proper version of the game, whether it's PSN package or disc. Has that affected you in any way?
I think for me, like when I've released Ninja, I've released the ROM per se. So most emulators can handle it. The type of mapper that it is what we call an NROM. It's one of the most basic mappers for the NES. And so that can be handled by almost any emulator out there. So in that particular regard, no, it hasn't hindered, but it could have been an issue because I have seen where friends of mine have released some of their games, but the mapper that they've chosen to use only works with like specific emulators nicely. And others, the graphics break. Certain layers shoot forward that shouldn't shoot forward. Collision kind of gets messed up. And so in that regard, it could play.
I've run into that before with trying to emulate Twilight Princess on a Dolphin.
And there you go. That's,
Everything looked like metal.
yeah, case in point. So it just really depends, you know, on how the game was formatted when it was extracted per se, and then you know what you're using to emulate to run it.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Radical Reggie and the Media Glitch just came
Sorry.
in. They brought us,
Hey, what's happening, man?
they brought us lunch.
You guys are so
Thanks,
sweet.
guys.
Thank you.
You're so
Thank you.
nice.
We're ready to sex.
Oh my. Oh, and we have Smash. Oh my gosh. I just looked over at Smash JT. What's up, Smash? How you doing? All right, we'll talk. We'll talk. All right. All the cool people in here. Thanks for showing up, guys.
We wouldn't miss it. We love both you guys.
I love you more because I was here before.
Yeah, I don't love you more than when I'm off you.
I actually love you more because I stay in your house.
That's true.
All right, this is taking a twist.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah. All right. So sound and music and creation. So I'll take this one. So I do have a background as a musician. You know, I'm not just throwing notes at a board and seeing what sticks and what's going to work right for a game. I went to school for music. Actually, I have a music major. But prior to becoming a music major, I was already playing in punk rock bands and writing music, writing chord progressions, writing melodies. I've always had ideas before even getting into some of the know-how for music theory. When it comes to, I think, video game music, I think for me, their aesthetic plays such an important role. And half the time when I write music for someone's game, I always ask, what do you want it to sound like? Give me some examples. Because if you leave it to me, I'll make it sound the way it looks to me, you know. And I think for the most part, I think it sounds pretty awesome when it's left to me. But I also like to make sure that I'm within the scope of the person's vision, the person's dream, you know, what they want to see come to life. And so in this particular case, Nyanja, when Sarah and I were talking about it, we're like, all right, so what should it sound like? And we're like, okay, we're gonna give it like a Japanese vibe, you know, maybe some traditional instruments, but I need some more examples. Like, can you give me something? And so he shoots over a game on the Super Nintendo. And I played that soundtrack, I don't know, like maybe like a couple of weeks, just on replay, from start to finish, from tracks that sounded Japanese, that did not, to like boss themes, to whatever, all of it, only because I knew Sarah liked it. And so my job now as a musician was to capture that essence, not taking anything from it, but just capture the essence and turn it into what you guys just heard in the opening trailer there.
And the inspiration for that was actually The Legend of the Mystical Ninja for the Super Nintendo. So if you guys heard hints of that, then that was the inspiration.
And so as a composer, when I'm listening to these portions, these pieces of the music, I listen to the chord progression, I listen to the melody, I listen to the harmonic structure, like how it's all, you know, because, I mean, again, if you're going for like a Japanese vibe, they're going to have a very particular chord progression. There's going to be a particular scale that they're using. There's going to be it's just going to be very unique to Western music. It's not going to be at all the same.
Very specific sounds.
Yeah.
Flutes.
Yep. Maybe the drum beat, the overall rhythm section could have like a westernized kind of feel, but the layer on top, what we're hearing melodically, that's what's going to have the most impact on us. And so, yes.
Are you using actual instruments or are you using computerized?
Good question. Both. So depending on the scope of the project, like for example, the immortal John Hancock, his game Blockum and Sock'em, that was for the Super Nintendo. I did his Genesis as well, and the NES version as well. Those were all using what we call trackers. So anywhere from OpenMTP for Super Nintendo, FamiTracker for the NES, Deaflmask for Sega Genesis. So it just depends on the scope of the work. In this particular case, these are real instruments. So the drumming that you heard earlier, the playing, it was playing on a keyboard, but then it's synthesized, so I can make it sound like whatever instrument I want it to sound like.
Right. Because we're working with CD, so
I can
it's
record real stuff.
easy to just use real instruments.
So it really depends on the scope of the work. If I had a preference, I don't really have a preference. I think both of them have their limitations, and both of them have that, they kind of push me to check my harmonic structure in a different way, depending on, again, like what it's going to be. So I like both. I think both are fun to write in. But yeah.
All right, so I guess now we can talk about how we go about with creating like a story, game mechanics. It's pretty much like the basis, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
would say so.
of a game. So with our game FX Unit Yuki, because I was creating this game for the first time, I didn't really have a scope for it, and I was like, oh, I want things to explode, and I want this, and I want that. And I need to shoot 'em up stages, and I started just throwing a bunch of ideas. And then when the game started coming to fruition, I was like, okay, there is too much going on. I probably should have narrowed down the scope of the game. But in the end, it turned out okay, but it was very stressful. I think that next time around, with this new game that we're making, we've pretty much closed like the scope of the game. It's not as complicated as FX Unit Yuki was, with various different stage types. But I do think that having a idea of what your mechanics are going to be like, you have to tell yourself, are you going to create a shoot 'em up stage? Are you going to create an action platformer stage? What are your stages going to look like? Now, as far as like your story and world building, that's really up to whatever your idea is and how you go about building it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for me, for example, I think going back to Ninja, it was just meant to be a party game. It's meant for you to jump in, do a few events, and then, or challenge a friend and see who does better, button mashing, And so the narrative for that one wasn't quite in place until, again, it changed to being a ninja theme, and then it kind of had a small narrative. Now, again, you're a ninja in training, and that's the whole point of the game, is that you want to become a full-fledged ninja. But in some of the other projects that I've seen, I feel like the narrative, it's kind of tough to say. I don't know, Sarah. Like, I think you would have a little more, especially for Ninja, like what inspired you to create that environment?
Well, I mean, we both like ninjas. We both
I
like
guess that's
cats.
true.
I think that pretty much wrote itself. So as far as story building for it, I kind of just went along with, all right, this is how I want the basis of the story to be. I want it to be two ninja cats. And then like little by little, I'm like, okay, we're going to have like this kind of villain in the game. This is the kind of mechanic that the game is going to use. We decided to go with like a Snow Bros Bubble Bobble type of game with this one because, like I said, I wanted to like narrow the scope of like the game mechanics compared to our other game, FX Unit Yuki, which we'll show you a trailer at the end of that game as well. But I feel like we did that with Nyanja. We scaled it down and focused more on the fun aspect of it, and the world building just kind of fell naturally with it. Just different Japanese type of things and themes.
I agree. Yeah, I think with regards, for example, to mechanics, a lot of that, I think for me, it was, I want to say, I worked off of the limitations for the NES in particular, and again, the type of mapper that we were working with. A lot of that it felt a little, I'm not going to say basic. It was pretty complicated, but in the sense of like, that was a scope that we had this like, we could only move in so many different directions. Okay, so that's a limitation that we have. How can we build something out of this where we could only move like this into something fun? And I think for each particular event, that was part of like the planning process, was to see how each event could be fun or entertaining and not just be like a rehash of the previous event, because it's using similar mechanics due to limitations. And so I think understanding your environment and the scope of work will also help determine what kind of mechanics you're going to be able to have within the game itself.
Right.
So.
Yeah, pretty much. You have to understand what your limitations are for whatever it is that you're creating your game for. But nowadays, there's so many different things that you can use to create games. There's like Godot Engine, there's Unreal Engine, there's Game Maker 2. So lots of newer games are made with these engines, right? Like The Messenger, I believe, was a Game Maker 2 game.
Right. I think, again, going back to GB Studio, I think that one, for example, you can have like the RPG kind of approach, like the the Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow,
Zelda,
kind of
overhead kind of game.
overhead shot, right? And then you go into a battle and it changes into text-based, and then you exit and you're back into this overworld view. Like that kind of stuff is built in. So that in itself, that's a nice scope. Like that's some great mechanics that you can work with,
Right.
And really build some stuff on.
But then you also have the limitations of working with a game on the Game Boy, and that's a whole different story.
Yeah, the compatibility issues you might run into, as we
Yeah,
talked
going
earlier.
back to
Yeah.
what he said. Yeah, that's definitely something that you're gonna run into with Game Boy.
Do you have a preference on what type of consoles you favor to work on for a game?
It's a great question. And I know you already know the answer to this, but thank you for asking that question. So for me, I'm a huge PC Engine TurboGrafx 16 fan, so that's always been my preference. My first game, FX Unit Yuki, and this game, Nyanja, are both for TurboGrafx 16. It's just a console that I grew up with, and for me, it was just one of those consoles that is near and dear to my heart. So for me, that's why I chose to do my games for the TurboGrafx 16.
But even as you've grown and learned about other ones, you still fall back to loving TurboGrafx.
I do, though I'm more open now to trying to create games for other things. Like I'm also working on a Genesis game. Even though we did port our game to the Sega Genesis, like a physical Sega Genesis cartridge, one of the other game projects that I'm working with another programmer is on the Sega Genesis. And little by little, I'm starting to find an affinity for putting stuff out on the Sega Genesis. Even though I was not a huge Sega fan back in the day, but now I'm starting to warm up to it, to putting games out on the Sega
Didn't
Genesis.
you also have it on Dreamcast?
Yeah,
Right here.
But that was just because people wanted it.
Okay.
Not particularly because I wanted to make it on the Sega Dreamcast. It was just we had done a Kickstarter, which we'll actually get into that point next. Reggie.
Are you liking the soundtrack on the Genesis version?
I do, actually. That's another thing
Good.
too, is that
Good.
that Yamaha sound, right, has like this like crisp chip tune.
Yep.
When done right, obviously, you have people like Sergio who know also how to do it, but I'm liking the soundtrack on our Genesis version of FX Unit Yuki. I think chip tunes just hit different.
They do.
They do. Yes.
But why do you port to older consoles instead of newer consoles or PCs?
I think because in my case I'm old. So these are the consoles that I grew up with. I had a 2600, and I had a Nintendo, and then the TurboGrafx 16 Super. And these are just consoles that I've always wanted to. When I was a kid, I've always wanted to make a game for these consoles, and now that I'm an adult and the resources are there to be able to run into other talent who also has appreciation for these older consoles. I think that's why I decided I wanted to do stuff for older consoles. But we do port stuff to the newer consoles, but it's basically the same older game. Joe.
How old are you? Because if you're old, I'm Asian.
No comments.
We'll talk after.
Late 70s. That's all I'll say. Late 70s.
70s. Okay.
Yes.
Do you have a specific focus that you like to start with when creating a game? Like, do you start with story or mechanics or anything like that?
That's a good
For
question.
me, I revolve everything around a character. Like, I'll make one character and be like, this character's freaking cool, but what do I want him to do? And I just start building around this character. For instance, this game, Nyanja, it's this cat character here. I actually created him back in 2004. And I would upload stuff to DeviantArt of like mock-up game screens of how I imagined this character would play in that game. And I always told myself, someday when I have the resources, I'm going to make a game with this little cat character. And then here we are. And I basically just focus everything around just this one character and what his world would be. But what about for you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think for me it was the opposite. It just started off with mechanics. It was literally like, okay, these are the limitations. Let's make something fun. Okay, it's gonna be event based. Okay, and then from that point it kind of morphed into something different. But it was just mechanic driven in that particular case. I mean, some of the other projects that I've worked on, a lot of them have been either music based, like audio on the NES, or video and audio on the NES. Not really, gameplay based. But yeah, again, other projects that I've written for, to me, it seems like the story's in first. You know, they're writing things out. I'm seeing screenshots of the game. I'm seeing dialogue of the game, like as I'm in these Discord channels, watching it come to life. And then as I see a good screen, I go, oh, cool, I can write to this. Because I haven't been given direction, right? They're like, just make me some music. All right, I'll make you some music. But I need to see what the game looks like, so I don't just blindly write you something, because then it's going to sound like Mega Man when you're playing, I don't know, just like something that's not Mega Man based, you know? Something more chill. Like
Something that's like a farming game.
like a farming game.
Heavy metal guitars.
You're like, dude, what the? It's not going to fit, you know? And so just taking that into consideration, like, yeah. So I think, I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah.
but
Well,
yeah.
I think for me also, because I'm an artist, I draw out everything. Like I do the pixels, I do all the material for my games. I do the illustrations for, and because I'm an artist, I'm always doodling stuff. And so sometimes I'll doodle something, and be like, hey, that character looks cool. And going back to the point of revolving everything around a single character, and I think that's what it is for me because I'm an artist and I like to draw.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll draw on a napkin and be like, all right, this is going to be the game idea right here. You know, that's pretty much it. Joel.
Was there something in FX Unit Yuki that you wanted to put in the game, but for space or for time, you just weren't able to?
Oh, yes.
That you love and you're like, oh man, I wish I would have been able to do that.
Stages. So on the PC Engine, you have so much room for like VRAM to like put stuff in, and so like when I started doing the plans for the game, my levels were like enormous, and then when it came down to it, we could only put so many screens into the game, so whole levels or whole sections from our stages pretty much had to be cut out. Bosses had to be completely cut out. And thankfully, because we were doing a Steam version, we were able to bring all that stuff back that we cut out. So that's kind of more of an incentive to get the Steam version when that's out, is we're able to bring all the stuff that we cut out of it. But yes, there was a bunch of stuff we had to cut out, unfortunately, due to space. And that's another thing, going back to the legacy stuff, is that you have to consider how much space you're working with too.
But that's something to keep in mind. I think he made a good point there. I think ultimately is when you do release a game on a legacy console, something to keep in mind is that if you're going to release it later on the PlayStation Network or Nintendo the eShop online, you could do just that. You could add those extra levels that you couldn't have had before. I ran into that same thing with Ninja because when playing the game, I always say to everyone, read the manual because every event is different with different mechanics. They're not all the most intuitive, which if I could go back in time, I would have added some more screenshots of little, but all this feedback came after the game was released, after the Kickstarter was done, and then they're like, how do I do this event? I'm like, read the manual.
Right, and then it's like your game's already done.
It's done. And so it's kind of tough to fix, right?
At that point, just save it for the sequel, right?
And that's what's kind of happening, right? And so as it's being released on Nintendo Switch, we now have, thanks to Star, we have this beautiful vanity, overlay. But on top of that, we have buttons now. And it's showing you what each event needs to do. Is it a left-right trigger? Is it an A-B? Or is it right-B, right-B, right-B? Like, what's actually happening? What are you supposed to be doing? And so in that particular regard, that's one way you can start off with the legacy console, legacy game, and then when it moves on to modern platforming, you can add more things to it. So that's another.
Yeah.
I think
So
that's an important.
a big advantage of being able to port your game to stuff later on in time.
Yeah.
Elvis.
So when do you want to start doing pre-orders for the game? I don't know if I'm basing it.
For the new game?
Yeah.
We're gonna first put out a demo, and once the demo's out, we're thinking about doing a Kickstarter for the game. So actually, thank you for asking that question, because that's pretty much our next segue.
Yeah.
Is talking about how to get the funding for your game. So
There's, I could start it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to crowdfunding, marketing is so important. Before you even start the Kickstarter, you need to have already built, at least a small following, at the bare minimum, like a few hundred followers. Like you have to have a following.
Facebook page, or
Yes.
Discord, or
Yes.
whatever.
You have to be posting like all the time about the game and just again building hype around it. Tell your friends who have bigger followings, be like, hey man, you want to give me a shout out? I'll hook you up with a copy of the game, kind of thing. Do what you got to do, but spread the word as much as you can long before the crowdfunding even occurs.
Yeah, be ready to give your game to like anyone who will talk about it. So
Yeah, you're gonna have
if somebody
copies.
has a platform and they're willing to talk about your game, Just send them a
A
game.
lot of money up front,
Yeah.
you know, because you're going to be giving away copies.
But-
you're not just giving it away.
Right, yeah. In the end, it's beneficial to you.
That
Yes,
marketing
it's
is
gonna cost you
priceless.
the money, yeah, but
never
the
got a
marketing
copy
that they
of
give
Ninja
you.
I got you, bro. I'll get you. Yeah.
How long
You
has it
too.
been out?
What's that?
How long has it been out?
2017.
Look at this.
Dude, I'm sorry. Dude, I'm
Or the
sorry.
bottom of the barrel.
You want it ROM or do you want the card? What do you want? Yeah, I got you. But no, I think it's super important to keep that in mind again, because once crowdfunding, once it's going and that campaign is running, you got 30 days to make this happen. You know, you got 30 days. And Ninja for me was funded in like 7 hours.
Wow.
The first 7 hours or like something like that. Yeah, it was immediately funded. But part of it is a strategy of how you set up your Kickstarter. What kind of tiers do you have? What do you have like some nice expensive tiers where people can have their name in your manual? They get a special cart. They get something kind of unique that would otherwise is not going to be outside of the Kickstarting campaign, right? So you want to create these special tiers that cost a little more, which are going to also help boost you reaching that funding goal. So
Yeah. So with FX and Yuki, we did the same thing. We had different tiers. And then for those of you who don't know, Kickstarter is a crowdfunding campaign that people use to give you money so that you can bring your stuff to fruition. With our game, FX and Yuki, we had basically different tiers where we would do like just the game, and then we'd do like the game and like a sticker thing or whatever. But it was important to just have different tiers. You know what? I don't know. Is it personal to ask you how much you guys asked for your project? Because that's another thing we're going to get into,
Yeah.
is the cost of stuff.
No, that's not at all personal. I think the initial one, what was marketed, or sorry, what was planned out was the overall production of like, we need at least 50 units to reach, you know, to make it feasible or to make it like reasonable to produce this. And I think ours was at like 3,000. It was super low. It wasn't high at all.
Was that for physical cards? I mean,
For physical cards,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And so physical cards are expensive, right?
Yeah.
The board alone that goes inside of the NES can cost you anywhere from, I don't know, $8 to $10 a pop, depending on what you're using, to more expensive ones that are like $14 a piece, $15 a piece, right? That's just the guts, right? The inside. We're not even talking about shells.
Or stickers
Yeah.
or
Those are like $5 a piece.
yeah, the cases.
Stickers about $1 a piece, depending on how many you're making.
Yeah. Your stickers. I paid a lot more than that.
Oh, dude, I'll share the deets. But yeah, what's up?
I was gonna say, having friends that are in those industries, like doing the stickers or doing like screen printing or stuff like that,
Oh,
that
yeah.
helps a lot with marketing.
And
So-
and that's
Oh,
exactly
sure,
what
yeah.
happened. Yes. And so for my manuals, the boxes, I had a friend do that for me. I mean, I still paid him, but like it was it wasn't at the premium. It was at a less of a cost, right? But I also hooked him up with a few copies of the game too. So in that regard, it's kind of a trade. But
Yeah, that's another thing too, is trade for work too. If you can like find people to trade for work. Like with my game, I had a programmer, his name is Old Rover, the programmer for FX and Yuki. He did my programming and I did his artwork for a different game. So I did artwork and assets and pixels for him. He did programming and assembly for my game.
We do that for each other actually all the time.
Yeah, we do that. He does music for me, I do art for him.
I'm not charging him, he's not charging me, but every time we need each other, hey, Serge, get me on, I
Yeah.
need some music, dude. Yeah, when do you need it? 2 weeks? Okay, I'll get you in 2 weeks, like, you know, and then again, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, how do you guys find like quality teammates? Because like for example, I've been working on for a game for 17 years now. It's a long time ago. And like the hardest thing is like, especially like for animators and stuff like that, I'll have them for a year and then they're gone. So then the next guy's like, I don't like this style. So then he wants to redo all the work.
And then he
And
brings
then
up.
like I have a coder who's like, I don't like the way the guy that did this, and he'll like delete everything and redo it. So like, you know, when you're having a lot of turnover, how do you guys?
I think for me, I think it's more of like, I'm just personal with people, you know, I just build a friendship around things that we like. And I think for me, the partnerships that I've had with other developers or other talent, it's just we're friends. You know, we become homies, so to speak. You know, and so whenever I need to talk to Saru, it's like it's just a friend now too. But we're also business partners at the same time, and we're working on something together.
Right.
So
So for me, with FX and Yuki, it was a TurboGrafx 16 game. I was someone who was on the TurboGrafx 16 forums since 2008, so I got to know a lot of people who were enthusiasts of the TurboGrafx 16 as well, which included a programmer, it included a tile artist, and my composer for FX and Yuki, who is somebody else, was a composer that I work with on an old PC game called Osu. It's a music game. I was the character designer. I made the mascot for that game, and I met him through that project. And I was like, I loved his music, and I was like, I don't know when, but one day I'm going to make a game, and I want to hire you. And he was like, oh, okay, whatever, And eventually, that did happen, and I got to hire him to do the music. So it really could just be circumstance too. It could just be you're part of a forum and then you start talking to these people for years and then they're like, yeah, let's do this thing.
I think forums is an important key, yes.
Oh, just a funny story I was going to ask DJ. You remember that run we tried to tried to port FX and Yuki to Dreamcast?
To the Dreamcast,
that was
yeah.
so crazy.
Yeah, so Radical Reggie over here, he actually helped me with the porting of the Dreamcast game because Dreamcast, you have to use this old program called Disc Juggler to burn games.
Disc Juggler.
And it's it not only works on Windows XP machines or whatever, and I'm like, I'm old, but I don't have a computer this old. I've got iPads and stuff in the house. And I was like, Reggie, can you do this for me? And he's like, oh yeah. And then you ran into trouble too, right? He burned
After it finished, the CD burn went out. So I was like, wow, I love you.
Yeah, so that's another thing working with legacy hardware is trying to get the stuff out physically working before you actually go into release. And Reggie, I don't know how many CDs did you burn trying to help me with that?
We went to 8 or 9.
Yeah, it's 10 CDs, I think, right? Yeah. And it would just crap out.
And aren't those GD-ROM too, right? It's not just DVD or...
There's CDs. So
There's CDs,
Dreamcast
yeah.
had two different types. They had GD-ROM,
GD-ROM, yeah.
and then they had something called Mil CD. And Mil CD is basically just a regular CDR.
Gotcha.
And that's how they used to crack the Dreamcast. Is the Mil CD was pretty much what tanked the Dreamcast.
Oh man.
But at the same time, it's also what brought such a huge third-party market or aftermarket. Because after the Dreamcast was dead, people were releasing games like we did for the Dreamcast long after the death of the Dreamcast, thanks to the fact that it had this exploit. So thanks to this exploit, a lot of people got to release their games physically on the Dreamcast and started their whole careers from that. And then they started porting those Dreamcast games that they made because they were able to use the exploit of the Dreamcast to further their careers. And then those games came out on Nintendo Switch and Xbox and what have you, all because of an exploit that we also took advantage of.
Yeah.
Someone who probably doesn't know much about Dreamcast, what exploit are you talking about?
So the Mil CD is basically the Dreamcast uses GD-ROMs, which is like a copyright protected CD. Well, Mil CD was what Sega used to make random BS software like photo CDs and stuff like that, and hackers found a way to use that to put games using that same exact format that would allow them to boot up. But that same exploit also helped people make pirated games. That's why people were able to self-boot games using regular CD-ROMs versus GD-ROMs, because of the fact that this exploit exists. But because that very same exploit that people were using to pirate games exists, also cultivated a huge aftermarket for the Dreamcast with that same exploit.
Wasn't it only certain Dreamcasts do it though, or is it every Dreamcast?
Almost all of them, except the very last run of Dreamcast that came out, I think, in 2001. So we actually have run into that problem with some customers, hey, your crap doesn't work on my Dreamcast. We're sorry, you might have a Dreamcast that isn't compatible. It's super rare though. Apparently it was their very last batch of Dreamcasts before they went completely defunct. So thankfully, I want to say maybe 90% of all Dreamcasts out there will play Mil CD.
Without doing anything.
Without doing, you just pop them in. John Riggs, his game also is a Dreamcast game that uses the same exploit that we do to play his game.
Yeah.
I may be misremembering this at all, but was the Dreamcast tough to make games for because I think I remember hearing that the boot up logo screen took up a lot of the storage on the CD. It wasn't on the actual Dreamcast console itself. Was it on the CD, or am I misremembering that at all?
The boot up is on the console.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess follow up, what would be your hardest console to make for then? Older or newer consoles?
Ooh. It depends. Pretty much anything that has strict copyright protection. So, say like even PS1 would be hard because PS1 games you still need some sort of modification to play a PS1
To run the
game. You need a
game.
mod chip or something like that. PS2 homebrew is pretty much non-existent. I think a lot of and pretty much anything with copyright protection, which is the same reason why we don't see a whole lot of Sega Saturn homebrew. There's like it's non-existent as well. There's maybe a couple people who were wanted to really tinker with it, but there isn't a whole lot of Sega Saturn homebrew because of the fact that copyright protection keeps them from doing it.
Yeah, and then part of like making your game too is like maybe you do choose a niche market. Maybe you do want it to be NES or you want it to be Super Nintendo. I mean, heck, it could still be Sega Saturn. It just runs on emulators. You just don't make you don't make physical copies.
Yeah, and no one will buy it.
And yeah. So then it's not good marketing, right? So then it just depends on what you want to do.
Yeah.
But if you want to create a nice product, I would go for something that doesn't deal with any kind of copyright or some kind of blocking.
Yeah,
Of running.
NES, Game Boy.
There's lots to choose from.
A lot of
Amiga,
consoles.
maybe?
Amiga.
Amiga?
Yeah, that's a sub-obscure system, but yeah, I think.
You have one, right? Don't you have
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
Do you have the US one?
Huh?
Which one do you have? Because I heard they're super, super rare.
Yeah, I had the one that wasn't released during that whole cycle.
The US one.
I saw like homebrew games still being made for that system, which I thought was
Really?
yeah, that's true.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Something to also keep in mind, sorry guys, something to also keep in mind with crowdfunding too, is you can run into holdups in your production. So it's something I'm currently experiencing a holdup on one of the projects I've worked on most recently was NES and digital audio, it was a digital video and digital audio on an old school NES. So you pop it in your console with no modifications and it plays real video and it plays digital audio, like instrument recording and things of that sort, right? But because of it being so special, the board itself required, and this was engineered by a friend of mine in California, that there's 2 chips that were missing, and because of the pandemic, completely like halted production, right? And so it's one of those where whatever it is you're making, I guess what I've learned is make sure it's available. Because if not, you're gonna run into this like production limbo and you're gonna be stuck constantly like, telling your backers, hey guys, so sorry. It's, maybe a couple more months. I don't know how long it's gonna take, and so that you don't run into that, maybe write or develop for a console where maybe you don't run into that kind of issue, or what you're building doesn't require a special board, But again, sometimes I guess you just learn from mistakes and or from the process itself, so.
That actually brings me back to the cons of doing things like Kickstarter. Kickstarter is great to get the money for the things that you need, but at the same time, you also have to fulfill what you promise. And like in your case, I don't know about you, but did you get like really angry emails from people?
Surprisingly, everyone has been super sweet except for one person.
Oh, lucky you.
Everyone's super understanding, which is really nice. And I can't say everyone will be that lucky. But I think what's important is that you have open communication. You're letting your backers know, hey, either catch it on social media, or you'll see a post here, or something. And in the meantime, I've actually even released the album that was supposed to be released with the cartridge. I've already pre-released it. It's had a soft release. All backers have it now, and so it's still moving. There's still movement. The project hasn't halted. It's just the production for that board is being held up. But you have to find ways to still keep your backers, keep them happy. Because at the end of the day, it's a product, it's a service, right, that you are providing.
And they're giving you money.
And they're giving you money. So you got to make sure you give something in return.
I will say I have not been so lucky.
Oh.
I've gotten some emails with very colorful language about where their products are. But that's another thing. That's definitely a con about doing crowdfunding, is you're getting the money ahead of time, right? It's basically a pre-order system, but on a larger scale with a lot more visibility. But at the same time, if you say, oh, this game is going to be released at this time. I told people that our game was going to be released in a year, and then the year came around and everyone was like, where's our game? You know, and it took like 2 years to finally get our game out. And because we just ended up throwing so much at it that the game cycle just took longer than we thought it was going to take. But people will be upset over it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But again, it's as long as you have open communication, you're talking to your people, you know, there's it should be okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, our very last talking point before we show you guys a couple more trailers is post-launch. Once we put the game out, right? Like post-launch engagement. This is where you put out a game, you want to make sure that your game gets to as many hands as possible. Never turn down an interview, because that's another thing too. Everyone's going to want to interview, and it doesn't really matter if they're the smallest channel or a super large channel.
Yeah.
I never turn down a single interview.
I mean, even if like the review, for example, if someone wants to review your game, I think what I found to be helpful was getting people to review the game. You know, like, yeah, I'll send you a copy, you know, if you review the game. And so then therefore, now it's in front of an entirely different audience that I would not have been able to reach, because now they wrote the review. And the review sometimes is good, sometimes it's, you know, Ninja was all right. You know, it was, maybe it lacked a little bit of this, but it's okay. At least it's being talked about, and it's now, you know, it's in people's minds.
Right.
I was gonna say, that's why Steam keys and such are like such a good thing for certain games, you know? You know, Steam keys, right? When you're doing that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Be ready to give those away.
Yeah, for sure. Soundtracks are super important too, is what I like to do as well. Like Ninja, for example. It's not explicit, like when you buy the game off my site, but sometimes I'll send you the soundtrack, just because, hey, why not? You know, a little extra for you know, you purchasing the game. People really like that. Little surprises.
Bundles.
They'll get stickers and things of that sort that weren't necessarily explicit, but you're just adding a little extra. Again, yeah, those cost money to make, but at the same time, it is that aspect of marketing and just kind of getting people hyped around your product.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's really how you market it too, you know, to your audience. What you basically just want to ask them what it is they want. What do you want to see? What kind of bundles do you want? What do you want in your bundle? You know, because people almost always want soundtracks. Soundtrack CDs are always like the thing that people want. I'm one of those people. You know, I always wait for whatever bundle comes with a soundtrack before I buy it from anywhere. People absolutely love soundtracks. They love collectible stuff. Whenever I put out a game, the different versions that I have bundles for every version, where I will put out a bundle with the specific soundtrack for the chiptune version, the specific soundtrack for the Red Book audio version, and then I'll do prints. I love doing things like prints. I'll do acrylics, and I do different bundles. People love collectible stuff. So if you have the bandwidth to put out your game and pack it with a collectible, absolutely do so, because people eat it up. They love it. And it's a good way to make a little extra income to do other things as well. Like you need to pay for anything, for marketing, for advertising, or what have you.
Doing like even limited releases at times too, if you decide, because the game's already out, right? But then you're like, you know, I added something extra to the game. Maybe I changed some of the soundtrack, some of the music. I'm gonna release it now as just a 20 physical copy, you know, 1 of 20. You're gonna check it out, you know, just kind of put that out as a boost for a game that's been out for a few years now, but now it's had something altered on it, so that you can kind of resurface it again. You can do things of that sort too, to create more hype around it, so.
All right. So, do you think we can show them a couple trailers
Yeah.
and then maybe do a little Q&A if anyone wants to ask us some questions?
I think that's good.
Okay, so the next trailer I'm going to show you guys is Sergio's game called Ninja 1 and 2. This is the trailer for the Nintendo Switch version of that game. Sergio's game, which is Ninja 1 and 2. Did they get this now?
Yeah, I mean, the ROM and the game itself, like the physical NES copies are available. The game should be up soon, I want to say in the next month or two. We literally are getting it approved now by Nintendo.
Oh,
It's
that's
going
a
through,
process.
yeah, it's going
That
through the
is a
checks right now.
process.
And Nintendo is really, really, really strict.
Yeah.
They're
They have
super
what is
strict.
what is the process that, they have a name for it?
They have a name, I forget the name.
Green lot, or something dumb.
Something like that, yeah, it's
I don't
weird.
remember.
And you just can't use certain words like start,
Yeah.
select. You can't say certain things, like it's very, very, very stringent.
Yeah.
But fortunately, the publisher I'm working with is Namitento. Again, this is another aspect too, that through networking, I got to meet the person who owns Namitento. Network, super important, network. I forgot to mention that earlier, but
Yeah.
make sure you network, it's super, super important. Anyway, he does all the lot checks for PlayStation, lot checks.
That's lot check.
That's what it was.
Not green.
Lot checks for PlayStation, he does it for Nintendo, he does it for Xbox, and so this game will be on all those platforms as well, so.
You can't say start with select.
Yeah, Nintendo, it's just, yeah, because there was weird, I don't, what was-
Oh, because plus and minus, yeah, for the Switch, so you have to just
there you go.
change the terminology.
So it's got to match what it's on,
It's still kind of dumb.
still kind of silly, but I don't make the rules.
It's a retro themed game.
Right,
It's
yeah,
homage
you know.
to what it used to be.
You just got to play by the rules, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Press any button.
Yep.
Everything up on screen.
Is that you on the guitar?
Yeah, so that was like real instrumentation, like the guitar, drums, everything. I layered it like
All
cake.
done by you?
Yes.
Although,
So
the
the
instrument?
even the intro, like the 8-bit that you heard, wrote that not actually in a tracker. The way I wrote music for that game was what started me getting into programming. Was completely written in like hex values. So for those of you that don't know hex is just a form, it's a count-based system where you're using 16 digits, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. And then it like starts changing. So anyway, I had to write music in that format. And so I had like this cheat sheet next to me where I'm like, okay, the rhythmic value of a quarter note, matched it with this particular pitch. Okay, it's gonna go right here in the code. Okay, it was so meticulous. It was insane. Like, but that's just how the game was written, you know, and that's how like I got into it. But yeah, so it was the 8-bit and the real instruments.
Do you have any resources you might be able to suggest for like getting into composition for game soundtracks, that kind of thing? I've always had kind of a rough time, like, you know the process, probably, like
Yes.
opening up a DAW and just kind of staring at it like, oh, what do I do, right?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I think a resource, well, not even a resource. I would say you gotta just kind of get your hands dirty by listening to what you like, pay attention to harmonic structure. It is so key. Like, do research on chord progressions. Get those down first. Chord progressions are so crucial because they are going to be the foundation of your music. Get those chord progressions down. Then, once you've got those chord progressions in place, start paying attention to your melody. But the melody will also be, it'll have to make sense to what game you're writing for. You know, the speed at which you're writing at. How fast is it moving? How busy are the drums? Are there any drums? What are you writing for is the first question you need to be asking yourself. Then, once you're at that point, you can start to determine what kind of instruments do I want to use, you know. But nonetheless, pay attention to chord progressions, so crucial. And then find your melody that fits well with each chord point. You know, there's going to be some music theory. There's a lot of really good YouTube videos on music theory and structure. Just get a basic foundation. Write from the heart, but also keep in mind like that harmonic structure, because that's going to make your music sound better. So it's a combination of both, writing from the heart and also like thinking about what you're actually doing. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Yeah, for sure.
All right, and then we
Yeah.
have one, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say Game Boy is a good community to get into, like you're into chiptune stuff.
Yes.
There's LSDJ, there's so much documentation.
Yes.
And then that'll get you in to like learning how to, you know, do the hexadecimal and stuff, and then you can take it to other platforms.
Hands down. Jump on forums. Ask other people too. Be like, what do you use? What inspired you? Like, what has led you to this thing? Again, everybody has different resources of how they got there. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask what your experiences working in the voice actors group.
Say that again?
Do you have any experience working with voice actors for your indie games?
Voice acting, a little bit, but it was it was John the Immortal Hancock. He did his own voicing. He did his own, but like, whoopsie, like little noises, like sounds and things of that sort. Not really voice acting, but it was. I did have to work with compressing it for the Super Nintendo because it was a sound bite that was going to be used within the game itself. And so it's finding that right level of compression where you don't lose too much, and when it's talking, it goes like it sounds crackly because it's way too compressed. It's avoiding that and just getting it to sound just right. So, I mean, to an extent, with voice acting in that regard.
So with our game, FX Unit Yuki, we do have voice acting in the Steam version, which is the newest version of the game that's coming out. In these legacy versions, there's no voice acting, but I basically source the voices with people that I know. Like people who are like, oh, I've always wanted to try to do like voices for something, and they offer, which is awesome. They're like, I'll just do it, I want to do it. I'm like, I can't pay you. And they're like, I don't care. I want to do it. So in my case, it was just no, right? Yeah. So it's like, all right. But getting to know people who want to do stuff like that, it's great because then they offer their talents. It's a win-win situation. They get their voice out there. I get a voice for my game. And speaking of my game, if I can show you a quick trailer of my first game, it's called FX Unit Yuki. All right. That was the trailer for our game FX Unit Yuki. All right, and at this point, we're going to open it up to questions for a couple minutes. Reggie.
Yeah, when did it become available on the Switch?
November 2nd of last year.
Okay.
We put it on the Switch digitally. Hopefully, we can work out a deal with some other third publisher to do a physical version, but right now there's no plans as of yet, but we're hoping.
Yeah. We'll talk.
Oh, yeah.
But Reggie sounds like he's got some too.
Yeah.
Networking.
What's the process of putting your game on? What's the process of a person, a regular player, playing your TurboGrafx game? Like as a console, right? So how do they actually get the file? Is it a CD?
Oh, it's a CD. It's a physical CD.
You send them out?
Yeah. So we did, when we released the first one, we did 1,000 copies of it. And even though it's a super obscure console, like nobody knows like what the hell is a TurboGrafx CD, right? Because it's old. We did 1,000 copies of it, and in like a year, I think we almost sold all of them. And then a channel called My Life in Gaming played it, and then we ended up getting a bajillion orders. And then Radical Reggie, who's in the audience right now, he is a big-time retro YouTuber, also talked about it. And so we ended up having to do a whole 1,000 batch because, you know, people towards the end started talking about it. And so, it worked out. But yes, it's a physical CD, but I am going to make the ROMs available. People keep asking because like people now have Misters and like they want to emulate it on their Steam Deck or whatever. And just because I haven't gotten around to it, but I will be putting like the ROMs for people to buy at a much cheaper price than buying the physicals. And I think you sold yours too, right? Like
They're physical and digital.
And digital.
Right, I do both. Yeah. 2,000 units, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we still have some from the second, yeah, but
That's good.
yes.
Cool.
What was the hardest part of translating your comic into the game?
Oh, well, one of the things is not being able to like add everything I wanted to add, because like the comic book, like the story of the comic book, there's a lot of different things that I wanted to throw into the game that I couldn't, because I wanted to keep the game linear, and even so, the game is not so linear. There's still a lot of story bits, but I wanted to like tell as much of the story of it as I can. But I think a big part of it is trying to keep everything together. This is actually a copy of my web comic. This is the only one I brought, because I'm giving this to Happy Console Gamer, because he's a huge PC Engine TurboGrafx fan as well. But I would say trying to fit everything, all your ideas into the game from the comic was hard for me, without trying to like throw in everything and just bore people. Because people at the end, when it comes to playing a game that's story driven, they just want to kill things. You know, right? Like you can't bore them with too much story, they're just gonna put it down and not play it. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question. Yes?
I was gonna say, isn't there, to add on to what you were just saying, some companies put in like a 40-second or a 75-second rule between events. Like, I know Bethesda with some of their games, like Fallout 4, it's like 76 seconds or something like that. It's for retention, you know?
Right.
And I'm just guessing it's probably like five back and forth dialogues between each level, right?
Yeah, so with our game, because it's an old game, we try to just put all of the dialogue bits just between the stages, and then boss events. Like when they reach the boss, they'll talk to the boss for a little bit, and that's pretty much it. So we try to keep it as short as possible. And I thought I was keeping it short, but like some people were like, how do you skip this? So I'm like, maybe the dialogue is a little too long. So this next game, there's like almost no dialogue. It's like the game has a story, and then it'll have an ending, but it's pretty much just straightforward action. All right, well I think, Reggie.
You said you possibly make an FXUniUki Part 2?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because we are working on a Game Boy version of FXUniUki called FXUniUki Minimix. And although Minimix is going to be a scaled-down version of FXUniUki, it is a sequel to FXUniUki. It does progress the story of FXUniUki for the Game Boy. And then eventually we will do a proper FXUniUki 2. But it's basically just to tide people over until we get to FXUniUki 2.
So it will be regular Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Color?
It'll be Game Boy and Game Boy Color. Yeah, it'll be compatible with both. Physical.
Yes.
All right, and I think our time is up. Hopefully no one else is using this room after us.
Yeah, we're like going over
So
by
we're
a few
like-
minutes.
yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. We also have freebies. Come for freebies.
Here, let's pass it out. Yeah, give me some. Pass out some. Give me some. Here you go.